Jason, you've been awful quiet as a function of the table. What have you been reporting on that you can give us a sneak peek on, or that maybe isn't getting enough play?
Well, one of the stories that's going to come out on Tuesday is just kind of a deeper dive into Senate Bill 5, the Municipal Courts Bill, and the impact of it on particular communities in St. Louis County. I actually got to talk with the mayor of Northwoods, who is sending out flyers about how they may be getting rid of trash service or possibly laying off people
because they'll lose money.
But I've also talked to proponents of this bill who say that for too long a lot of these cities have been too dependent on fines and court costs. But I've also heard the other side that maybe percentage is not the best way to measure oppressiveness of a city. It may just show that a city is poor, essentially, and that some of the West County cities, I'm not trying to demean Baldwin, for example, but for example, like Ladue has had a well-documented racial profiling controversy for years, and it's a situation where they may not be impacted by this bill because it's percentage as opposed to total amount of revenue. So that's something I'm looking at. I'm also looking at transportation issues, and maybe I'll write a preview about the 4th of July in June or something like that.
We're sticking to legislative issues tonight.
We're going to stick to the legislative issues.
You were nodding your head.
Yes, I did want to go to a point dealing with Senate Bill 5. What is really important that your audience should know about is that we changed the definition for revenue, and that's what my mayors, 41 of them that I represent in the Senate district, they wanted a recalculation, and that is the deal that Senator Schmidt and I came to. I said I cannot move forward on Senate Bill 5 unless we get rid of these pass-throughs, as well as some other items for every single city that they utilize, like the Mules program, which documents all of the different stops in various municipalities and jurisdictions. With that, many of the mayors went back and recalculated what their revenue would be, and many of them got to under 10%. So some of them were at 15%, they went down to 7% or 9%, but you literally had like the St. Louis County domestic violence pass-through, you had the chief's pass-through, and the post pass-through, and police training. Those are all pass-throughs that should not be within the definition of what revenue is. But what I am concerned about, that I've heard recently from my constituents, is that because some municipalities see Senate Bill 5 as taking away revenue, there might be some municipalities that are trying to fine individuals on their homes and their different ordinances.
I just would, you can rest easy. The point that you made on the outside of that comment is in the article. So there you go.
Good to know.
One of the things I've been wondering, and Senator Chappelle-Nadal probably has a better handle on this, is whether or not a fallout from that bill could force some of these really tiny communities like Charlotte or St. John or others to have to merge, or at least to talk among themselves. I think there's the realities of having to maybe merge together as opposed to the political reality. If she's got 41 mayors, and if that means 10 of them are going to lose their jobs, they don't want that.
Or they might combine services.
I'm sure the senator knows more than I do, because you meet with your mayors, as you said, on a quarterly basis. Yes. But I've heard kind of both scenarios. Like, it's possible some of the cities may voluntarily merge with each other and potentially become, potentially stronger municipalities, because they may have a stronger tax base with more population. But I think that some may fight this bill tooth and nail, and there's some that may disincorporate possibly. There's a lot of what ifs here, but for example, merging municipalities, it could go either way. It could be a good thing for those cities, or it could be a not so good thing. It's hard to say.
It would be a great precedent to set, to have some disincorporation, some mergers, just to put a paradigm shift down there, because we never think in terms of getting rid of cities. We never think in terms of merging, except for city and county perhaps, but we don't talk about some of the more practical mergers, and I think that would be a great example.
New institutions for when times have changed, for new needs. The counties changed, those cities changed.
The current population, instead of a present population living under some arrangement that was made 2 or 3 generations ago or more, now, the people who are there now can actually shape the institution.
Now, you're not suggesting in the St. Louis region we have a tendency to protect our turf.
But it's not just in St. Louis.
We learned it from Illinois.
You ever been to Parma, Missouri?
Yeah.
You ever been to Parma? You ever heard of Parma?
I have
before
heard of Parma
it broke
before,
out?
yeah.
There's Parma's had about 600 people in it. It's been almost a dying town since the 1990s when a factory left. There's actually another small municipality close to it called Pennerman. Everybody ever heard of Pennerman? There's about 30 people live in Pennerman, Missouri. So it's not just St. Louis. It's all across rural Missouri. These municipalities are going to defy the state government as long as they can. And they're going to do exactly what Senator Chappelle Nadal talked about. They're going to increase property fines. They're going to find some way, maybe increase a little bit property taxes, which they haven't had to do in a long time. They're going to find a way to defy our state government, and they're going to stay alive. And they're going to, and just to your, you're being a little facetious, but they're going to keep their fiefdom, and we're going to have to do something a little bit more creative and a little bit more nourishing in order to get.
And there's some pride
right
there
thing.
too. There's some identity there. It's not just.
Well, there are some people that like living in smaller cities where they can see their mayor walking down the street,
Right.
as opposed to living in a city like St. Louis City, where although I could see my alderman because there's 30,000 aldermen in St. Louis, but the government is bigger and it can be more remote from everybody. And obviously what Charlotte has, 30, I'm thinking of Champ. Champ has 30 people or something.
I used to have Champ in my district.
So there are some extreme examples, but even some of the smaller cities in your district, like Greendale, Valda Village Hills,
It's
people
ridiculous.
like living in those.
And let me just tell you, there are multiple things that you have to consider when we have this conversation. One, service delivery. I've had 4 tornadoes in my district. In 2006, I had some tremendous storms where our electricity was out for about 2 weeks. And then we had the floods where 2 of my senior citizens died and ended up in the Mississippi River. So you care about service delivery. So you can reduce the number of municipalities, but when you have a natural disaster, or since we're dealing with Ferguson, we're in that age, you have to consider what service delivery is going to look like. And right now, I don't have confidence in St. Louis County government to be able to deliver those services because they haven't in the last 11 years. Now, it may get better in the future, but part of the reason many of my municipalities are working together and they're cost sharing a lot of the overhead. There are some mayors that are out there who are shoveling their own snow because they can't afford it. And so that's what we have to be concerned about. But here's another point that we all should be cognizant of. There are several bills, including Senate Bill 199, not 190, that's the deadly force bill, but there's several different bills that we had in the legislature this year that would take money away from municipalities and cause school districts to increase their tax levies as well as municipalities. So let's be fair. We are making these municipalities way more accountable, but at the same time, at the state level, we cannot take away that tax base that is so important to communities that look like mine.
Are you talking about the pool tax situation?
Not just the pool tax.
Give
there are
Andy the last
multiple
word.
bills.
I want to jump in. I think one of the underlying problems here is the Hancock Amendment. Politicians are afraid to put any tax increase on the ballot. It won't pass if it goes, and that's why we're in this traffic fine problem.
The Hancock Amendment says you can't tell them to do something that you don't give them money for.
You can't raise taxes without a vote of the people, and that functionally has stopped tax increases. We have starved our municipalities.
And it has the restrictions on how much additional income a community can bring in without having to reduce their tax rate, like if they get a certain higher percentage, unless there's been extra development. The Hancock Amendment has really changed how
Okay,
things
we got to leave
operate.
it there because